When you take a look across the landscape of the NFL looking for players that fit the mantle of most valuable, most, understandably, will be quarterbacks. The quarterback is the most important position on an NFL team, and while that quarterback might not be your team's best player, they are still the most important, and therefore, in most cases, the most valuable. There are many top-tier quarterbacks in the league right now, such as Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Jared Goff, and even rookie Jaden Daniels. But there is still one quarterback in 2024 that is a cut above the rest. Not only is Lamar Jackson one of the most dynamic and exciting players to watch in the league, he's also a two-time MVP winner who's playing better this year than he ever has. Last year, Lamar's case to win the MVP award was questioned by many due to other quarterbacks having higher stat totals in areas like passing yards and passing touchdowns. Lamar's style of play has always revolved around him being the greatest dual-threat quarterback to ever play, so it makes sense that he may not outthrow some of the league's top pocket passers. But if there's one thing that Lamar Jackson has proven over and over again throughout his career, it's that anything you say he can't do, he's bound to prove you wrong. And in 2024, he's proving all the doubters wrong yet again. Let's get to it. Welcome in, everyone. This is Jordan with Ravens Flash Report, and I haven't been able to do one of these player deep dives in a while, so please go ahead and hit that like button if you do enjoy, subscribe if you're new around here, and put your thoughts on what has impressed you most about Lamar Jackson's play in 2024 down in the comments section below. Let's start by taking a look at Lamar Jackson's career stats and compare what Lamar has already done this year and is on pace for compared to his previous seasons. Last year in 2023, Lamar had his best career year in a few passing categories, completing 67.2% of his passes for 3,678 yards and picking up 167 first downs. For his most passing touchdowns and fewest interceptions, we have to go back to his 2019 MVP season where he threw a league-leading 36 passing touchdowns and only 6 interceptions. He also had his highest passer rating in 2019 with a 113.3, while only being sacked a total of 23 times. Let's switch things up now and take a look at the seasons where Lamar has done the most damage with his legs. In 2019, Lamar broke the single-season rushing record for a quarterback with 1,206 rushing yards to go along with 7 rushing touchdowns. Lamar also led the league, averaging 6.9 yards per attempt and averaging 80.4 yards on the ground per game. In both of these MVP seasons, Lamar led the Ravens to the best record in football, with a 13-2 record in 2019 and a 13-3 record in 2023. So let's take a look at this year and see just how good of a season Lamar is on pace to have after 10 weeks of play. The first thing to notice is that Lamar is throwing the ball more often than any year before, as he's projected to have 490 attempts on the season. What's even more impressive is that normally you might see a decrease in completion percentage, but despite the increase in pass attempts, he's completing a career-high 69.1% of his passes, and with 2,669 passing yards, he's on pace to destroy his previous single-season passing record with a projected 4,537 yards. His 24 passing touchdowns not only puts him on pace to have 41 by the end of the season, but he's already tied his season total from last year. His 2019 passer rating of 113.3 ranks as the 13th highest single-season passer rating in league history. If the season ended today, though, his current passer rating of 123.2 would be the highest of all time in a single season by any quarterback. What's even more remarkable is not just him averaging a passer rating over 100 for a third season of his career, but how he has achieved this average. In his 2019 season, Jackson recorded a total of 9 games with a passer rating over 100, including 2 games with a perfect passer rating and 3 more over 130. In 2023, he had 6 games with a passer rating over 100, 1 game with a perfect passer rating, and 2 others over 130. His longest streak of games with a passer rating over 100 was in 2019, where he had 4 games in a row between weeks 8 through 11. This year, however, Lamar has continued to exceed everyone's expectations yet again by not only achieving his 4th game with a perfect passer rating, which ties Ben Roethlisberger for most all time, he's also recorded a passer rating of at least 100 in all 8 games since week 2 of the season, which is not only a streak twice as long as he had in 2019, but also a streak where during those 8 games, he has averaged a passer rating of 136.1, dominating opponents and record books alike. One might think that Lamar's ascension into the realm of passing royalty would come at the cost of his ability to run the ball. They would be wrong. This is Lamar Jackson after all, but his usage has changed, and for the better in my opinion. What has impacted Lamar's rushing numbers the most this season, understandably, is the induction of Derrick Henry into the Baltimore offense. While Lamar's attempts per game at 9.1 are slightly less than his career average of 10.1, we haven't seen as much of a drop-off in Lamar's production on the ground as one might think after signing one of the most productive running backs in the league. Currently, Lamar has run the ball 91 times for 538 yards and 2 touchdowns, while on pace for 155 attempts for 915 yards and 3 touchdowns by the end of the season if he plays all 17 games. Over his last 3 full seasons, 2019, 2020, and 2023, Lamar averaged just over 160 attempts, around 1,000 yards, and 9 touchdowns on the ground. His 5.9 yards per attempt are the 4th highest of his career, his 53.8 yards per game are the 5th highest, and if he finishes with his projected 915 yards, that will be the 3rd highest total in a season of his career. In fact, if Lamar does finish the season with 915 yards, he will have surpassed Michael Vick as the all-time quarterback rushing yards leader, and he'll have done it in 40 less games, which is essentially over 2 seasons earlier than Vick. So we've broken down Lamar's season and how he has improved in both the passing game while not losing a step at all in the ground game. In fact, this Baltimore offense that Lamar leads is currently number 1 in overall yardage and points scored, as well as the 3rd-ranked team in passing yards, tied for 1st in passing touchdowns, and 2nd in interceptions. Meanwhile, the run game is ranked 1st in yards and yards per carry, while also being 5th in rushing touchdowns. All the while, Lamar is winning games and improving with every season. But let's move on from Lamar for a minute and talk about some of the other quarterbacks in the league whose names have been thrown around for MVP candidacy this year. Let's start with the king of the court himself, Mr. Patrick Mahomes. It's no secret that Patrick Mahomes is having a down year in 2024 when compared to his career accomplishments in the regular season in previous years. But even if you think the defense is what's carrying this team, they are 9-0 and Patrick Mahomes is still winning games. I have up on your screen now Mahomes' stats for the 2024 season so far through Week 10. Note that the Ravens have played in all 10 weeks, but the Chiefs have already had their bye, so there are some differences as far as raw numbers. If we instead look at averages and full season projections, we can get a more accurate sense of how Lamar stacks up to Mahomes this year. If we put them side by side, there's really not much of a comparison nor an argument for Mahomes. Lamar is outperforming him in every passing metric outside of Mahomes having a better completion percentage by 0.35%. But overall, Lamar has him beat in every way through the air, throwing for twice as many touchdowns, having a passer rating nearly 33 points higher, and being intercepted 7 times less than Mahomes. Lamar also takes less sacks, and while the rushing numbers are up here, it's really to compare all the candidates I'm going to show you, and so Mahomes is of course not on Lamar's level when it comes to impacting the ground game. But that was just a warm-up, if you will, because outside of the record column, I don't think anyone genuinely thinks Mahomes is outplaying Lamar Jackson this year. Moving on to another top-tier quarterback who many believe do have a legitimate chance for the MVP title over Lamar Jackson is Bills quarterback Josh Allen. Allen is coming off a 2023 season where he threw 29 passing touchdowns and got into the end zone himself for an additional 15 rushing touchdowns. Many fans thought that Allen was robbed last year of the MVP voting. But whether you think he was or not, the biggest knock against Josh Allen coming into the season was his turnovers. Josh Allen's numbers in 2024 don't really seem to be on pace for hitting the same highs that he had last year, but he does have Buffalo at an 8-2 record and running away with the AFC East title. Again, let's compare Allen's stats to Lamar's to see who has the edge so far through 10 weeks and 10 games. While Allen has looked better than Mahomes, he still isn't close to the level of play that Lamar is at, nor the production. Lamar has more completions on less attempts, and nearly 400 more yards, 7 more touchdowns, half the interceptions, and while Allen does have an average passer rating of 100.2, Lamar is still 23 points higher. When it comes to the run game, Lamar outclasses Allen there too in yards and yards per attempt. The lone exception is rushing touchdowns where Lamar has 2 and Allen has 4, though given the difference between the Ravens and Bills' run game, it makes sense that Allen has to make up the difference. In the end, Allen also doesn't really have a case to be MVP over Lamar, and unless Allen plays out of his mind in the last 7 games and Lamar falls off a cliff, there really won't be a case by the end of the season at all. Our next contestant is a quarterback who had decent potential to challenge for the MVP award this year, right up until his Sunday night game in Week 10. If you don't know who I'm talking about, it's Jared Goff of the Detroit Lions. Now, even with his interception total on the season more than doubling in one game, Goff still had respectable stats, and based on his 17-game projection for 2024, a decent showing from a production standpoint as well. Despite him having a very poor game statistically against the Houston Texans, resulting in his worst passer rating of the season so far, the Lions still won that game. He also had an extremely respectable stretch of 6 games in a row with a passer rating over 100, and currently has his team 8-1. While I do think Jared Goff does have a legitimate chance at challenging Lamar for the MVP award, the two quarterbacks find themselves on the opposite side of a similar scenario based around the run game. We spoke briefly earlier about how impactful Derrick Henry has been for this Baltimore offense, but as impactful as Henry has been for the Ravens, I think Lamar Jackson has been even more impactful for Derrick Henry. To put it simply, Henry and the Ravens' run game benefit more from Lamar than the other way around, whereas Jared Goff benefits from Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs more than they benefit from him being at quarterback. Overall, based on the production projections, it again looks like Lamar is set to outpace Goff in passing yards, passing touchdowns, fewer interceptions, passer rating, and of course, everything on the rushing side of the ball. Now, don't get me wrong, I think Jared Goff going to the Detroit Lions has been an absolute success for both him and Detroit. Together with Dan Campbell and a few great pieces on offense and defense, the Ravens may see them at the end of the season. Having said that, if they do see them in the Super Bowl, my money will overflowingly be stacked on Lamar Jackson, who will have already won the MVP award earlier. Before we get to our last true challenger for the MVP award, I wanted to give 2 honorable mentions on this list, because I've heard both of these names a little bit more than I was expecting to. The first is Jalen Hurts, quarterback of the Philadelphia Eagles. Hurts is also a great quarterback who has his Eagles on a 5-game win streak after demolishing their division rival Dallas on Sunday. The main problem that Hurts faces with his claim is simply one of production. He just doesn't seem to be consistently good enough week in and week out. A perfect example of this would be the Eagles in Week 3 with their win over the New Orleans Saints. It was his only game throwing the ball for more than 300 yards, but he didn't have a passing touchdown and had an interception. Jalen and Barkley make a fantastic duo out of the backfield, and as a Ravens fan as well as Lamar Jackson fan, I don't mean this to be disrespectful, but as it stands this season, I'm more scared of Jalen Hurts' legs than I am of his arm, because as of right now, his 12 passing touchdowns are only 2 more than his 10 rushing touchdowns. The second honorable mention is Washington Commanders quarterback Jayden Daniels. Right out of the gate, let me just say that I think Daniels is fantastic and is going to have a very long and successful career in the NFL. But as Steelers head coach Mike Tomlin said, everyone needs to slow their roll when it comes to comparing Daniels to Lamar Jackson. Now, I am not inherently against a rookie being named the MVP. I simply don't think that Jayden Daniels is better than Lamar Jackson. There is a learning curve to the NFL, especially when we're talking about rookie quarterbacks. Daniels had a passer rating of 141 against the Cincinnati Bengals in Week 3, but then on Sunday in Week 10, he had his season's lowest passer rating of 68 against the Pittsburgh Steelers, where he also had his lowest completion percentage, completing 17 of 34, or 50%. Jayden has potential to be a fantastic franchise quarterback, but right now, he's just too inexperienced and inconsistent to be the league's most valuable player. The final player we're going to talk about that can challenge Jackson for the title of MVP is, unfortunately, probably not even going to be considered for the award, as there's a good chance that his team doesn't even make the playoffs. I am, of course, talking about the Cincinnati Tiger Bees quarterback Joe Burrow. So far in 2024, we have seen Joe Burrow back to his fully healthy and dominant form, with a huge passing numbers, great decision-making with the ball, and a competitive winning mentality that makes him and his offense a threat late in games. The problem that Burrow has is simply that his team is not winning games. Think about it this way. If Joe Burrow was the quarterback of the 9-0 Kansas City Chiefs right now, and Patrick Mahomes was the quarterback of the 4-6 Tiger Bees, I think we can all agree that Mahomes wouldn't even be near this list, and Burrow and Lamar would be almost the only two duking it out for the title. As the Bengals are a division rival of the Ravens, it naturally gives me nausea to compliment their team's quarterback, but objectively, Joe Burrow paired with wide receiver Jamar Chase is probably the most dangerous duo in the NFL right now, outside of Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry. But I don't feel too bad seeing as we swept them this year yet again, and Lamar is 10-1 as a starter against the Bengals. Now all we need to do is finish the job that Burrow couldn't and win the Super Bowl. So, having said all that, let's wrap things up nice and tidy. Patrick Mahomes is quarterbacking well below his own standard on a 9-0 Chiefs team that has been bailed out several times this year. Not a contender for MVP. Josh Allen is one of the only true dual-threat quarterbacks in the league right now, and while he has been playing well against some teams, his production isn't there this year, and they got demolished when facing the Ravens and Lamar face-to-face. Not a contender for MVP. Jared Goff just had a disastrous game for his standings in the MVP race. That aside, it seems like his relationship with the run game is more parasitic than the Ravens' mutualistic one, and therefore, he's not a contender for MVP. Jalen Hurts is not consistent enough nor productive enough to be on this list, and although Jaden Daniels is a fantastic rookie, he has a lot to learn before he truly takes the league by storm. Neither are contenders for MVP. Finally, we get back to Joe Burrow, who is having a statistically great season, even surpassing Lamar in a couple categories. However, the most important category in football for any position, but especially quarterback, is wins. And Joe Burrow simply has not gotten it done when he needs to, bad defense or not. Not a contender for MVP. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, my breakdown and analysis as to why Lamar Jackson is the only reasonable contender for the title of MVP. He leads one of the best passing offenses in the league. He commands and contributes heavily to the best rushing offense in the league. And if neither of those are working and you absolutely need to make a play, there's nobody that I would trust more to get it done this year than Lamar Jackson. Like I said in the beginning, guys, if you enjoyed this breakdown/stat comparison, go ahead and give the video a like. Subscribe if you're new around here and comment down below your thoughts on this year's MVP race, as well as who you think will win. As always, guys, stay safe out there and go Ravens.